started. So just
Yes.
to remind everybody, please just mute your microphone unless you're speaking, just in case we get a little static. If you can be on camera, please do so we can actively engage. And, we just appreciate everybody joining us on this lovely August day. So with that, why don't we go ahead and get started, and we can go ahead and pull the agenda up. Okay, so welcome everybody. We're glad again that you're here and you've taken time out of your day to join this one, because this is going to be a great session, by the way. So what we're going to do today is we're going to give a little bit of an overview of women's streaming media and the Allyship program. We'll do an intro to our Ally of the Month, which I'm very excited about. And then we will let him share his background in streaming media and share what Allyship means to him. Then we're going to move into the Ask Me Anything questions, where we've got some curated questions. We'll also be looking for your questions in the chat. And then we will end today's call with some information about upcoming WSM events, including IBC. So that is great. So let us move on. So a little bit about the WSM program for those of you that have or may be new to this and haven't participated before. So we always want to get everybody up to speed with everything that's going on with women in streaming media. So as a global networking organization, our mission is to increase diversity and give more visibility to women leaders within the industry. To do this, Women in Streaming Media will create forums and events to connect women, provide mentorship and internship programs to grow women's participation in the industry and leadership roles, and promote other opportunities to help women achieve their professional goals. Our membership is free. It allows you to connect with supportive community of women in the streaming industry. And speaking engagements help to participate in industry events and discussions. Our award-winning mentorship program helps women in the streaming media industry to gain invaluable guidance from powerhouse industry leaders. And then our education is we're working on that, empowering the next generation of women through various activities such as hackathons and speaker confidence programs. So a little bit about Allyship specific, because that's why we're here today. We are aiming to drive meaningful change by understanding privilege, creating awareness, and practicing allyship daily with actions. We like more men in the streaming media industry to lead by example and amplify women's voices, support representation, and create an inclusive environment in the streaming media industry. And we started this program in early 2024, and we had our first session in February. So we are just getting going this year, and we're continuing to build on every month. So it's very exciting. Our program provides opportunities like Ask Me Anything, and that's what we're going to be doing today. We've done some panel discussions, workshops, and general knowledge sharing. Allyship is instrumental in creating an environment where women from all backgrounds and experiences are not just included, but also valued. It's an opportunity to actively contribute to a more diverse and inclusive streaming media community. By supporting our Allyship approach, you are part of our collective effort that benefits everyone involved. Your actions ripple through the platform, leading to improved relationships, enhanced collaboration, and a stronger sense of belonging for all. So with that, we will move on to our introduction, because y'all, we have a really special Ally of the Month this month. We have an Emmy Award winner. So that is very cool. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce you to Bhavesh Upadhyaya. I hope I've done that justice for you. So Bhavesh is first a husband to a strong woman. He's a father to a strong daughter and son. He and his family also have 2 cats. He's a technologist and a problem solver. He's had experience of working in startups and Fortune 100 companies. He's been on both sides of seeing companies bought, sold, and merged. What has he learned is that culture matters. He wants to share some of those moments that taught him about what diversity means and what being inclusive is so important for long-term success. He's learned with that best role is an ally and a catalyst for growing group of superstars. Please give a warm welcome to the Emmy Award-winning Bhavesh Upadhyaya. So thank you for joining us. We're super excited. So let us move on to the next slide, and then we will let you talk a little bit about yourself and about your background.
And there's my family. I wanted to show some other stuff. We love going to the outdoors as well as some there's our cats and brownie points for me. I was able to get my daughter to a Taylor Swift concert, so she's very happy about that. Um, I've I've been in the streaming space for quite a long time now, and I've seen amazing successes and amazing failures and amazing learnings throughout that process. And I've been with some amazing teams, and I've also been part of downward spirals. I think when we talk about culture, we talk about diversity and inclusiveness. I think a lot of people talk about it as a lip service of just what does it mean. But I think when you go through a lot of stuff, you truly understand the impact and how beneficial it is to you, to your team members, and everyone else, and then the purpose of whatever your team is supposed to do, your company, etc. How important it is to have amazing people around you who are free to talk about their ideas, and we'll get it more into that as we get into the questions. I do. I'm normally an introvert, and I don't like talking about myself or things I do. So I find strength in talking about my projects, and I talk about my team members. And I know that I've got a couple former colleagues on the Zoom call, so that's making me feel comfortable already. So, and Lisa, one good thing is that they didn't really know about women in streaming media, and now they do. So at least out of a you're going to get some powerful people who now just found out about it. They're on the call, and they'll be probably able to be part of WSM more in the future.
Okay, great. Do we want to move on to the next slide? There we go.
Sure. Um, I'm not going to read through my own words, but
Okay.
it's I've had a lot of time lately to just kind of finish reading more books and kind of understanding why certain projects and certain tasks were successful and why they weren't. And when you create a space where people are comfortable in expressing their ideas to the fullest extent, when you approach people and say, like, what makes you uncomfortable, why are you hesitant, what's going on over here, like, let them come out of their shell when you're trying to tackle a larger problem, that makes everyone else work that much better. It makes ideas flow faster when there's a safe location for ideas to flow. Where and I'll use some examples as we go later on. But one of the things that I found is when you have a very close, tight-knit group of people who all are of the same mindset, and you all come up with the same ideas, you all will applaud each other for thinking the exact same thing that the other person thought about, and you move forward in that same direction, everyone happy about what you've done. When you bring in diverse people with diverse ideas and you include them, and by asking them the questions, by making sure that they have an ability to talk about it and be comfortable with it, then you get a much better sense of what you're trying to solve. You have a much better chance of actually winning, um, and being better. I think the one thing that I want to that has to encompass all of this stuff is that intent of trying to do something for the long term. Because a lot of things when we talk about this stuff, if you're looking for a short-term success, you can be mean, you can be rude, you can, just run things on your own, and that may work for a short period of time. But if you're trying to build long-term success, if you're trying to build long-term teams and long-term relationships, you have to create that space for people to understand that they are also with you for the long term, and that they're going to be valued for their ideas and for their differences in opinions and for their ability to convince people based on facts. And so what does that mean? That means that you need to make sure that you're giving people that chance to rise up and meet their challenges as they need to, by creating that environment where you're listening and you're understanding and you're approaching things together. I think that's where allyship helps you get to. And I think what we want to also talk about is how do you get to that point of creating that kind of environment where people are uh, free to talk and comfortable about talking. The last picture is just a fun picture of Beijing Olympics in 2008 during the opening ceremonies. And I think in that picture you have Opening ceremony is almost done. You're seeing the parade of countries coming around the corner, and that back corner behind my shoulder with the red line are 120 of the, if not more, of the world leaders all sitting right there. So this is an amazing location, amazing time and place, and just to be part of excellence. And I think that's what that is the ultimate example of diversity and inclusiveness, of seeing the best people do their best and kind of show the world and what they're capable of doing.
Yeah,
We
that's
can-
definitely another way to see the Olympics, right? Like, okay, so first question, it's about defining allyship. I mean, you started defining allyship, but how would you define allyship in the context of streaming media industry? And why is it essential for promoting diversity and inclusion?
Streaming media industry, although some people are getting into it and they've been in it for most of their career. I think this is going to happen with the AI side as well too, which is the next wave of like really cool stuff that's happening. The people who join in and at the beginning are the problem solvers, the brave ones, and then they're trying to figure things out, and they don't necessarily know the right way of doing something, so they make a lot of mistakes. And I think once you get beyond that point and you start to grow and start to doing different things, you realize that your idea of your just trying to break through and solve problems it doesn't work all the time. It may work for a short period of time, and how do you now get to a point where you're creating a solid foundation of people who are also going to be joining you in this endeavor? In the beginning of streaming, everything was, and this is one of the things I'm working on, like a maturity model. In the most immature way of doing things, everyone has to act as a superhero or a lone individual to try to get something done, and that can work for a certain period of time for one event. You can have all your concentration on one event, but in order for you to succeed and build out a complete, long-term solution or a long-term platform or whatever in streaming media, you need a full foundation, and that means bringing everyone along with you for the ride. And you can't do that by creating all these artificial barriers to entry to join you. And I think when people have done that in the past, where they say, "Well, I'm only going to have my friends join me in doing the kind of thing," it's a disservice to you. It's a disservice to everybody else in the community as well too. You really want to have that amazing group of people around you. And I think with streaming media, in the beginning, it was a very few amount of people with certain set of ideas. I think our job as we get further on is to figure out ways to include more people inside there to, one, benefit from the learnings that you have, also benefit from the success and the joy that you get from delivering amazing events. And I think that's part of what you have to do. The one example I love to think about in movies is in Indiana Jones. If you remember when he was going after the Holy Grail, he would go through all these problems, right? But he didn't just like erase his solution and then keep on walking. He presented and showed it to you, like when in the leap of faith scene, where he just scatters the sand to let people know, yep, there's a bridge there. Don't worry about it. Don't be afraid. You can cross with me now. And now that you've joined me, now we can all solve problems better, faster together on the other side, instead of having to say, I'm gatekeeping and I'm going to make you solve the same problem that I solved a year ago, 5 years ago, 10 years ago, etc. I think it's very important to, again, it's part of education. Once you learn something, you figure out ways to teach other people to get them to your level. Now you can go to deeper levels of understanding together.
Yeah, I mean, I think this is in general inclusiveness of, like promoting diversity in any dimension, right? Not only for women. Yep. Yes.
With women and even with Asians as well too, I think as a culture, being Indian coming up as well too, and I've seen this with my women friends, we have a tendency to be quieter. We have a tendency to not talk as much, to not be confident. And I think one of the things that beyond streaming media that we have to talk about is how do you find your strength in being able to communicate your ideas? And that doesn't necessarily come it should not come I mean, what the tool that it's helped me is it's not come from me as a person, it's come from me as my purpose and as my idea or as my goal. And speaking on behalf of other people or other groups or other things, that is what's given me strength to communicate and talk in those situations. And how do you kind of explain using examples of how that's worked to show other women that they can do this as well too. Part of what it is, and my daughter's on the call as well, so I want to make sure that being a good dad, I want to make sure that I'm showing her an example of what a good world can be like. I know that she's going to face challenges in her life as well too, but if I can be an ally and I can show how it's not just good for other people, but it's actually good for you as well too, I think then that's a good lesson to learn.
Yeah, that sounds so sincere and touching. Thank you for sharing. So should we move on? So how did your experiences with Olympics influence your understanding of allyship and support for diverse communities? I mean, were there some specific moments or insights that impacted your perspective on inclusivity and representation?
I had never done broadcast until that point, and seeing the team that was involved there, it was amazing to see the women in Beijing. We all worked together in Connecticut at NBC Sports before we all moved to Beijing for the final 2 months to 6 weeks in the Beijing in order to run the Olympics. But their focus and their tenacity and being able to manage and organize the schedule for every, when you look at it from a consumer perspective, you're just looking at the final end sporting events of what goes on in the Olympics. If you've got to take a step back and understand the scheduling of what it takes to organize all of the edit bays, all of the equipment, all of the people, all of the time schedules, the circuits, the cameras, there's so many things involved in setting everything up. And you have these amazing women there. They have an army that they've been doing it for quite a while now, so they're very experienced at doing it. But it was just understanding the level of complexity that they were managing in their minds and then figuring it out and putting it on paper. This is back in 2007, 2008, that it wasn't quite streamlined and optimized and digitized yet. So they were doing this on their own. And that was such an amazing thing to understand, that there can be products that are this complex and people who know exactly how to manage it. And how do you take that now and translate that into digital, make it online as well too, outside of the broadcast? That was spectacular. The one thing that really got to me about streaming during that time frame was an interview with a woman from, I forgot where she was from, but she had won a shooting competition in Beijing. And normally, if you think about it, back when it was only broadcast TV, none of these sports were ever made it on air. No one would have known anything about it. And you would have had these amazing folks go do their, pour their heart out, spend all this time to get to go to China in 2008 and do amazing in the Olympics and have no one to share it with. And she was able to, I remember seeing this interview, and I can't find it right now, but she was being interviewed by NBC. And she said that by the time she was finished and she had realized that she won the bronze medal for the US and she came back to sit down, her phone had all the texts from all of the relatives, because they were able to watch at home online and see in real time that she won and able to celebrate with her. And I think she had an emotional, obviously emotional from her part, but also to know that she's not alone, that she was able to share it with her entire family. I think that really brought together the power of streaming and the power of, the power of the technology to really get ideas out across the world really fast. And it doesn't have to be for the big events. Sometimes it really matters just for a few people here or there. And if you can if you can be part of that, then I think it's a great feeling.
Yep, certainly. So Elisa, I'm continuing with the questions. I don't know if there are any other questions from the chat.
No, I don't see any
Please.
questions from the chat. I
Okay,
did
okay.
include the survey form for everybody to fill out. So I just want to put that in there, and we did get some feedback on that. So thank you, Michelle, for sending us that. We'll check that out.
Okay.
Okay.
So continuing, how can allyship be tailored to support women and other represented groups within the streaming media industry?
I think there for sure. I think there needs to be more of an outreach around there. And then Misty and Michelle, I'd love if you guys can get off of mute and kind of talk a little bit about yourselves as well too, because you two are amazing women in the industry and doing extremely well as well too. To talk about the fact that, you know, like some folks didn't really know about this, but I think to get it out there, to how do you get other women involved who've been doing this stuff for a long time as well too, get them involved to help out the next generation, to talk through some of these ideas. And I think to really get men like me as well too to open up and think through their past, to realize what they've done, and to talk about it as well too, and to be I think in one sense to make it a little bit selfish, to realize that they can do so much better if they, you know, join an amazing group of women as well too, to do amazing things on their side. Let everyone else be their hero and do really good things. I think outreach is extremely important, and more of these, you know, especially with Zoom, more of these abilities to do mentorship and problem solving in a group setting where people can kind of walk through learnings that they've had, kind of walk through shared experiences that they've had, and kind of support each other by talking through ideas and saying, look, I'm experiencing this. How would you help me tackle it? What are some of the ideas inside here? And not necessarily solve the problem, but just kind of ask people questions in that process to let them understand what they can do that might improve their conversations and communications. I'm Michelle.
Hello, Michelle. Would you like to add something?
I'm putting you on the spot. I'm sorry. She's not connected to audio. There we go. Still not working.
Hello?
Okay.
Oh.
Hello.
Oh, there it is. It just hello. I'm Michelle Rhee. I've known Bhavesh for a long time now. And I joined just because I'm a big fan of Bhavesh, and he's been an ally, colleague, and a leader that I've worked with in the past. And I got really excited to see him here today and being a supporter. So I'm just great. I'm here to support him and support all of you just by being here. But I've been in the streaming media for some time. I'm over at Paramount. I'm sure you guys heard a lot of the news going around there, but can't really talk much about it because this is recorded. I don't know where it's going, but so hello. And I think allyship is really important just because I think, Bhavesh, you put it on point, like a place to ask questions. I think we all have amazing stories and some challenging stories that we could all share of being in the industry of tech, right? So I think what I'm going to leave with is stay strong. I say listen to your peers, support one another. When it comes to leadership, I think, you know, how do we balance that sometimes, right? I'm in program management, meaning project management. So, you know, we're kind of always in between product and engineering. You know, when it comes to PMO, we're the first one on the line to be blamed for everything, right? I don't know. When it comes to certain things, you know, we're not just organizers, we help drive. We're not just note takers, we help drive conversations. We are mediators, we are contributors, and we shape strategy. So I think being here with you, Bhavesh, you know, we have someone, you know, we need someone to always be an ally, to hear our voices and hear what we have to say in the business versus just the top leadership area. The stories come from bottom up, right? So anyway, I can talk about this forever, but thank you for allowing me today. And really,
Thank you. Yeah, this is perfectly aligned with the next question, which is about leaders. What role do leaders play in fostering culture of allyship within their organizations?
This is, I think, is the heart of it. How do you create a culture where allyship and inclusivity are part of everyday life? And that has to come from everybody within the organization. It's not just a word that, labels that you put on the wall and that's it. But how do you, on an individual basis, get to know people within your group and understand their intent, understand their background and their context, and then use that later on as we need to when you're talking about it to be able to help draw out the best of people in conversations. I think it's a matter of figuring out, taking the time to listen when people are not talking, find out like who's within the meetings, like if or on an email thread or whatever, when you see that there's some folks who are not necessarily participating, how do you draw them out to make sure that their views are being heard, that their ideas are coming through? Because one of the examples I'll give, when we're working on a summit for creating Max, as we were talking through these ideas about how we're going to do 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, in the room, I saw somebody just kind of like wince subtly and then kind of let it go. And it took the opportunity to say, well, stop. What do you mean? What are you uncomfortable with? What makes you uncomfortable? Do you not know the technology solution? Do you not have control over the program? Is just going to take too long, longer than what we've got over there? Like, let's bring it out so that we can find out and we can all work on it together while we're all here, instead of you trying to internalize pain and just say, okay, I'll just bear with it later on. I think that's a mistake that what we got to get away from. But how do you create that culture of letting people understand that they, if they are uncomfortable, they need to speak out. They need to really express their idea. And so that means as a leader or as somebody else inside the organization, you need to lay the groundworks ahead of time by saying, how do I make it open and comfortable for people to, like, one, get to know you, get to understand what your contexts are, and then understand when you're not communicating, of how to get that, communications and your ideas out of people who are quiet. I think to the point before that I was making is, then how do you find the strength in those people? Well, how do you talk to them about that? And I think that's where I think that purpose really comes through. I love Simon Sinek's book, Start With Why, which is, why are you doing something? What gives you strength to say, no, I need to really vouch and really communicate and talk through and support this idea, is because it means something better for you. It means something different for you. I love streaming because, like I mentioned the story about the Olympics, I can use, having fun in technology, I can use that to help amazing content get out to, that artists and musicians and sports people. I can have them get their ideas and their all their the result of all their hard work out to the public to watch and see. I think that's amazing. And so as we're going through all that, to Michelle's point, when you're the voice of the customer within a company, I think you should be, you can look and say, well, what are we doing inside here that is blocking the flow of progress on the streaming side? What is preventing a feature from going out there? What helped create, or what caused an incident? How are you going to solve that problem right now? And then how are you going to solve it for permanently? And so that's your purpose of giving you strength to be able to talk and break out of your shell. And now, how do you get the best ideas from these folks to talk about it within that context and let them know that they're safe to talk through? They're safe to give all their ideas. Doesn't mean that we're going to follow the idea, but at least we want the idea out to discuss, to be able to say, okay, what are the merits, what are the cons, etc., so that everyone can come together and maybe they disagree with the conclusion, but they're going to make sure, yep, we're all going to go in that same direction.
Yeah. So, I mean, were there some successful strategies or programs that you have implemented or you are aware of that effectively educated employees about allyship and unconscious bias?
Was not a part of helping create those programs, but I did
Mhm.
at Discovery and Warner Brothers. We did have a couple training programs that went through and talked about diversity and inclusiveness. But again, I think it's a matter of doing it by yourself, though. It shouldn't be a matter of like watching a training session, because those are online web trainings that last about an hour. I think when you see it from leaders, when you see examples being set by other folks, that's when you take it to heart and you're also doing it as well too. And I've been lucky to be have some amazing mentors as well too, who have been in the industry even longer than I have and have greater contacts. And one of them, who I'm going to nominate later on, Lisa, to be another ally of the month. When we went right after COVID, and we got to go, a bunch of us got to go to NAB and IBC, and he was the first to be able to say, we need to bring on these three women who are newer to the group, much younger than all of us as well too, and said, no, we need to bring them there and justify that they need to be in these conversations for two reasons. One, to help meet other amazing women in the industry in an amazing location, outside of work, and two, to start getting that practice and that behavior of being able to, walk around in, 50, 100,000 people environment and zone in and figure out, well, what is important for future technology? What do we want to research next? How do you meet those people and be the face of the company when we're meeting other groups that are there, whether they're other partners or vendors, etc., to get them that experience and ideas. And I think that's walking the walk. That's not just simply saying, oh yeah, we're diverse and inclusive. It's like, no, we want to make sure that we are giving opportunities to people to be out there in the front. And I think that's amazing. And those are the kind of examples I want to follow.
Yeah.
Great.
Well, maybe, yes. Sorry.
Sorry, I just wanted to add, that's great. Thank you for sharing that. Yeah, I just love hearing you talk about these. So just wanted to chime in there.
Yeah, I mean, this is also relevant to the next question. How can allies address and overcome resistance to diversity and inclusion initiatives within their organizations?
That's a hard thing to crack in a short-term thing. I think that has to be a long-term thing. And I think one of the things that, and I'm going to bring up my daughter here for a second. She's studying environmental science, and one of her teachers had talked about how the negative parts about some messaging that was going out there, it was trying to shame people into doing things the right way without necessarily giving them a purpose. Just saying, oh, you're not doing something, shame on you. Whether it's like, recycling or whatnot. And that doesn't help further your education process, And so one of the things that I would talk about is how do you show the benefits of that instead, to say basically, if you're looking to grow far, if you're looking to, to go, have a long-term history in this industry, you can't do it by being a solo-minded person. You've got to do it with a diverse team. You've got to include all the ideas of the people within the team in order to be successful. You can be successful in the short term doing things on your own, but you can't do it so far away. So I think if you look and talk and start talking about the benefits, to say that I will take a team of diverse individuals who are free to talk about their ideas and pit them against a team of amazing friends who just talk to each other and know it, they're almost all alike in their thought process. And maybe they might win one or two things, and they might be successful, but in the long term, this diverse team will be more successful than anybody else. And these are not easy things to prove in the short term. These can really only be shown in a long term. And I think it becomes hard to kind of show, and I wish there was business case studies about this, how do you compare corporations that are truly diverse and their success and their ability to withstand like the period that we're in right now, negative aspects of the industry? How do you keep a group together? How do you still succeed in a negative trending world? And I think a diverse group of people will be more successful because they'll have people who are fighting with for each other, not against each other. I think, like I said, this is a tough one to crack, but how do you do that in the long term to really show that it's the right way to go? And you're silly not to. You may think that you're doing well, but it's silly not to.
Yeah, and I mean, a lot of examples that you brought up have a common thing, like having a safe space for people to express ideas and their perspectives. So
Yeah.
what strategies would help to create safe spaces for open dialogue about diversity, inclusion in the workspace?
I think, and this is an example when Deepali, Lisa, and I were talking earlier this week. I use this example as well too, also in the movies. How do you give people an opportunity to communicate and come up with ideas? And the example that I had, which is it's kind of silly, it's from the Avengers, and it's that scene where Tony Stark and Peter Parker are just been like kidnapped into the spaceship and they're flying out of it, so they're literally off the planet for the first time, and things are not looking well. And in that moment, you could have had an experienced veteran like Iron Man just say, okay, here's what we're going to do, and we're going to solve the problem, and everyone could have just follows along because of course he's a billionaire, he's amazing, he's smart, etc. But instead, he chose that moment in that point of stress, in that time of crisis. He chose that moment to say, all right, Peter, here's the situation. What would you do? And I think that's where, as leaders, I think that's the best time to start asking for advice and start asking for ideas, is when there's a sense of urgency and a sense of need and a little bit of a crisis maybe, or at least some excitement out there, to be able to use that to say, hey, let's get the ideas. What should we do next? And again, you don't necessarily have to follow the idea, but you want to start that behavior of that habit of getting people to communicate and talk through it and say, here's what I think we should do. And 9 times out of 10, you're probably going to get amazing ideas coming out of people that you normally would have thought didn't know, I didn't know I have it in me. And now all of a sudden you've just created that environment so that for the next time that comes through, you've just created a superstar. Now they've got the confidence. They've got my opinion was valued. You've created an amazing location, a concept for them to communicate and open up and really talk through what they want you to talk through. I think that's what you've got to do, is you've got to really get that, be open and ask instead of just saying, all right, everyone follow me. It's like, no, you might know more than I do. You might have better context than I do. You might have a different viewpoint than I do. What would you do? How would you help look at this stuff? And I think if you're, again, single-minded people versus a diverse group of people who have different ways to look at a problem, I think you're always going to succeed.
Yeah, definitely. Are there any additional questions from the chat, or any questions from on the fly? Deepali, you joined.
I would love
Yeah.
to, it's a bit noisy because I'm outside,
Okay.
but I would love to ask a couple of questions. Like, first of all, thank you so much, Bhavesh. And it's always, great to hear from you. I have a question, like I wanted to ask this earlier also. This is very tricky, and I always try to understand from the, Allies Network. How do you measure the success of allyship efforts? What are the efforts we are putting as a team? Within a team, what metrics or what indicators can we use to assess whether the environment is genuinely inclusive, or whether the diverse voices are heard or not?
I think now we can get into like a little bit of a measuring like a project success in that sense. This is where I love data from this perspective, but it's a matter of thinking through what are your trailing indicators and what are your leading indicators for this. And I think if you're looking at like you're trying to measure, well, how do you measure the success of allyship? So as a trailing indicator, how do you see more women in conferences? How do you see more women in leadership? How do you see, that's an end result of the hard work that you're going to do ahead of time. So how do you measure the steps of hard work that are happening right now? And I think that goes into, I think more sessions like this. How many sessions are you going to have per month? How many meetups with all the women in streaming media are you going to have and continue? How are you growing that base? I think if you start asking things like, how many questions are we getting? How many feedback forms are we getting per week or per month or per session? Those are little tiny indicators that they're showing that you're gaining incremental benefit, that more and more people are joining, the more you've got more outreach out there. And then you're creating that critical mass of amazing people. And I know Alyshia's been in this industry for quite a while as well too, and she's been known as being a leader for a long time. And so it's amazing that you've got somebody like her as part of this group. I think how do we get more allies involved as well too for the streaming women in streaming media? And I think part of it, you're creating an incredible litmus test to be able to say who have you worked with well in the past. I think that's the solely way to say, how do you notify them? But if 4 or 5 of you have had a good experience, maybe that person is an ally, didn't know it. Like when you reached out to me, that was a complete surprise. It was a shock and a welcome and humbling thing that you guys you considered me an ally, and I'm trying to do my best. I'm not. But how do you get more people like me who are silent and who don't necessarily know that they're doing this, and kind of put the spotlight on them and say, hey, be more active. Let's now that you've been tagged, it's your responsibility to participate more. How do you push it back on them to say, let's get this bigger? So maybe that's another metric to measure, is how many of these allies have you captured, and how many of them have been joining your groups on LinkedIn? How many of them have been able to join these monthly calls, etc. And I think if you have a joint call of women in streaming media on its own, but then have like an adjunct call for the allies as well too, to say, hey, what else is new? Who else can you communicate with? Maybe that's another metric to kind of add on to say, how else are we growing this? And bit by bit, again, this is a long-term effort. That's why everything is coached toward what is your long-term goal. And I think that is one of the ways to say, well, let's start seeing something. And so once we get past that critical mass, all of a sudden, it'll start rolling much, much faster.
I love every word of it. And thanks for giving us such a, incredible idea about not just doing the call with monthly with the allies, but also doing the network of allies. That's a great and, amazing idea. I also have a curiosity, and, you might have shared this, but I might have missed it. But just, to ask in case if we missed this question, can you share an example where a situation where actively supporting or amplifying, allies led to a breakthrough or a significant positive outcome for your project or, for your team?
Oh,
And what are the lessons you learned from those experiences?
I've got an excellent, this is one of my favorite moments inside Warner Brothers Discovery. It was during a hackathon, and there was this woman, coder, engineer, really, first of all, everyone had the days off, so no one had to do any like work. Everyone was part of the hackathon, came up with some ideas. And I had all of the QoE data with me, and she was working on tools for advertising, and looking at ways like errors that were coming through on the ad side. And so I became her advocate during the hackathon, because I thought she was working on something really cool, and all she needed was a catalyst to add a couple more data points to build out an amazing tool. And so for over 3 days, she and a bunch of other folks kind of worked through. And again, she's not used to being in the spotlight at all. But we were able to get and talk to this idea about what would happen if not just looking at ads, but if anybody from customer support, they had a customer coming in and saying, I've got a problem. why can't we look at the QoE information and show their pattern over the last week and say, oh, I found exactly your issue because I've seen, based on your account, because you contacted customer support, I can find all your logs and actually come up with a graph about exactly what issues you've had in the last week. And now all of a sudden, instead of, we did this example, instead of taking 48 minutes to almost 2 days to get information bit by bit over email or by, instant messaging, etc., the conversation went from, I've got a problem, to, yes, let's go start solving your problem within 5 seconds. And so she helped build out a tool that looked at that for the hackathon. And although we didn't win the hackathon, 3 months later, she was able to turn that into a project. And not only was it there, everyone in customer support started using it. They loved it. And it was also then integrated into, later on, we integrated into Salesforce, so that as everyone who was like communicating it within the customer management system, they automatically were able to, like, okay, here's your last 5 videos that you watched, successful or error, here's the error rate, here's all the other QoE metrics that came from there. And immediately they were able to help. The customers felt like, oh my God, you see me, I'm being helped, I feel better about it. And it was going, moving forward. And she got the benefit, she got a promotion out of it by getting all the stuff inside there. And that was one of the proudest moments of being able to take somebody who was quiet behind the scenes and didn't know anything about it and kind of elevate and say, look, you've got something really cool, you're doing something amazing, let's just add a little bit more. And all of a sudden it can be used in a wide variety. So her core base, she kept on elevating and expanding it. My God, you should see what it can do. Like, literally take apart the video start of the stream and show you bit by bit exactly where it was communicating, where it was getting the ad calls, where it was getting DRM, and kind of showing a complete graph of what was going on per session. And she did some amazing stuff inside the code. So that, I love that moment.
Wow, such a, really, really a practical example, and so much to learn from it, because most of the time I feel like women have, those insights and everything within them, but they need just one, ally to push, or sometimes it's hesitation might be. But this is such a, great example. Another, very critical question I'm going to ask you, and when you have a team where more vocal members take a step back, and you try to kind of elevate the quieter voices, and in such situation, like, how do you balance the need for diverse input with ensuring that the conversation remains very productive and focused? Like, what are the strategies can be employed to ensure that the voices contributed effectively and not just created noise?
There's a book that, I guess I gotta find it. Crucial Conversations is a book I've been reading as well too. And inside that book, it really talks about how are you impactful when you're in a conversation with people. And really, your impact is better when you're speaking less. And so I think if you teach people to kind of like, look, we're going to come into this problem solving session, and you've got to make sure that the entire group understands the groundworks of that session. What are you trying to solve? What is it, just a weekly readout of what's going on there? Or, oh my God, we've got a situation, we've got to figure this stuff out. Everyone should have like a maximum number of tokens, let's say, in the conversation. So really think through, what is it, if I'm going to use a token, what is the message I want to send? What is the idea that I have inside there, so that you're making sure that one person, at least mentally, understands that they can't be taking control of the entire conversation. The other thing that I love doing in these meetings, and I love doing them when they're in person as well too. Like we've had, when you're in a big problem solving session, or you're trying to do a massive planning session, and you've got like 20 people in a room. I like to walk around the room, especially walking into the back of the room and listening into, because then you kind of hear the conversations of folks, or the ones who are not necessarily speaking, and kind of just like, and then if they've got a good idea, kind of like stop and just point out and say, this person hasn't spoken yet, or they just came up with a really great idea. I think the group needs to hear it first. And really make sure that everyone is getting their ideas out there, because again, long term, you want everyone to be invested in what you're trying to do. And you're not going to be invested if you think that all you're doing is just following direction. You're invested when you at least your idea about how to solve it is heard. And every moment like that is a learning opportunity for that person as well too. Maybe here's my assumption. I've made this assumption and I'm going to keep it like that as an assumption, not knowing if it's true or false until maybe later on when I might make a mistake. But if I have the ability to, or if I'm brought out and say, this is my assumption, let me talk about it right now. You've got the entire group of people who are able to let you know, good assumption, here's why it'll work, or I can see where you came from with this assumption, but here's the other thing that you don't have the context for. That's why it won't work. And now you've taught somebody something and not just let them be inside. So I think that's important to kind of walk around. And another reason to be inclusive and make sure that the ideas come out is because you want people to learn. You want make sure that what they're thinking about is based on the right context.
Okay, well, thank
And
you
so-
very much. This was super wonderful for us to hear, and you have such great thoughts, and we're going to talk more about that. But we need to move on to kind of get to our closing state. So if we can pull that deck back up, please. Wanted to remind everybody that IBC is coming up. It is a major industry event. It'll be held in Amsterdam on September 13th through the 16th at the RAI Amsterdam Convention Center. There are approximately 43,000 attendees that are expected. They're going to be broadcasters, content owners, rights holders, and service providers. For those of you that don't know about IBC, it's delivering innovation, connecting communities. IBC 2024 is where the future of the global media and entertainment industry is redefined. Women in Streaming Media are proud to be participating in 3 panels this year. So those are the future of content viewing, Olympics 2024, technology to broadcast beyond expectations. And I'm sure you'll be at that one, right, Bhavesh? To hear that one
this year, but thank you. Yeah, I'd love to hear it.
And then finally setting the pace for fast in Europe, monetization and motivations. So those are something, if you are attending, definitely look out for those. We do want you to come and meet with us at IBC. For those that are able to join, in the Women Streaming Media newsletter, there are details about link to the page on the website and how you can join those that are going to be participating in IBC this year. So please do that. You can always reach out to send an email at allyship@womenandstreamingmedia.org. So thank you for that. And that's going to for sure be an amazing event this year. So awesome. So next slide, please. So we want to give a big thank you to you, Bhavesh, for joining us today. It's been really a joy for us. I took down a couple of takeaways that things that I heard you say or that came up today that I thought I'll just bring that up. First, the importance of outreach and connections, in this time. So I think that's important. I heard stay strong and listen and be heard. I think Michelle brought that one up. I loved that. What are you doing? Asking yourself that. If you're doing something, are you getting something out of it? Is it getting better? What are you getting out of it? So I think that's a good thing that we should all be doing regularly. And then I loved the notion of ask for advice and ideas during crisis and don't mandate. So be open to listening to what others have to say and make sure they're getting the correct information and advice. But that's wonderful. So thank you for that. So we do, anybody that wants to continue to reach out to you, we are encouraging them to reach out to you via LinkedIn. You can also reach out to us at womenandstreamingmedia.org or send an email to the Allyship. The email is up there for you to see. But this has been a great conversation. Everybody stayed engaged, and we want to keep this flowing, the whole platform for fostering allyship in the Women in Streaming Media organization. So thank you. A reminder to everybody that next Thursday, we have on August 29th, we have the monthly remote member meetup meeting for all of Women in Streaming Media, and that will be at 8 a.m. Pacific time, 11 a.m. Eastern time, and 4 p.m. BTT time. And then we did send out that form. I think there were a couple of maybe some issues on something that we saw, but your feedback is invaluable. So if you can fill out the form, please just take 2 minutes to do so. If you want to just send notes via the email address at Allyship and womenstreamingmedia.org, please do that as well. But thank you for your time, and we appreciate Bhavesh for being our August Ally of the Month, and thank you to Leto for all the great questions, and to Polly for leading the Allyship team, and everybody else that joined. So again, thanks everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank
Thanks,
you, everybody.
Lisa. Thanks, Bhavesh, for those book recommendations. And thank you so much. Look forward to see you again in the next one for another awesome ally.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Goodbye.
Bye-bye.